My IF can beat up your IF. I was born into a Roman Catholic family and from 1961 through 1971 received the sacraments of baptism, confession, communion, and confirmation. Additionally, even though my faith had waned considerably by the time I completed my 25th trip around the sun, I had a nuptial mass in 1986. I stopped being Catholic or Christian long ago, and over the past half century, I've worked very hard on severing any remnants of mysticism that were inculcated in me in my pre-adolescent years. The wedding mass was a concession to my parents, my bride's parents, and to a very small extent, my bride. I have journeyed long in my effort to reject mysticism and to accept that the ancients were trying to make sense of a world that can be very misleading and therefore came up with a lot of stories to explain things. Some of the stories achieve the status of gospel, while some rose to gospel. And to many religious folks, these attempts at making sense with very limited data supersede and eclipse modern data that contradicts the old stories. Data that is also far more in keeping with repeatable observations and experiments. Regardless of one's acceptance or rejections of science or mysticism, I understand that there are good people who are highly religious and believe in what I call nonsense, just as there are folk who understand that science offers us a far better chance of understanding how the universe works than fables do, but whose words and actions I find abominable. Though the call of puberty's hormones, combined with a greater understanding of history and science, were highly instrumental in convincing me to leave the church, I understand that many leave because they experience abuse at the hands of someone, usually a man, who presents himself as a pillar of the community, while in reality he is emotionally, mentally, physically, and or sexually abusive. A circumstance I've had many friends relate to me as having occurred to them in their youth. The phrase, hate the sin, love the sinner, is often brandished by people of faith. But for me, it's love the spirit and ignore the blindness of folk who passionately believe in their brand of mysticism and its accompanying cornucopia of rules, regardless how absurd I find it when someone tells me that the earth is roughly 6,000 years old and the great flood wiped out all the animal life that wasn't on Noah's little ark, or whatever equivalent your brand of childhood mysticism demands that you must believe to be saved, even though the assertions of your holy book are demonstrably absurd. I'm also acutely aware that religion or mysticism is often used to elevate some humans to an exalted status while diminishing and castigating others simply for being other. In Judeo-Christian and Islamic religions, women are often demonized and blamed for man's downfall. Furthermore, women as temptress and temptation are blamed for men pursuing, wooing, fornicating, committing adultery, and raping, an absurd absolution of men and scapegoating of women. Many religions preach that those with means deserve them and those without are suffering for sins committed in previous lives. A wonderful worldview if one wishes to keep the powerful in power while denigrating and brushing aside the impotent. This demonization and abuse of power to retain power is certainly not limited to mystics, as pseudoscientists have proven their anti-equality positions by picking and choosing only the facts that support them while ignoring those that refute. But my focus here is on mysticism. Because I did not suffer terribly at the hands of religious tormentors, I can smile and nod when loving people say things I know have been proven false. And while I am quite vocal about my lack of theism, aka atheism, I do not utter my thoughts and feelings to someone of faith unless said someone is preaching to me without my consent. I often talk about people's imaginary friend, aka IF, when someone touts God or gods intervening on earth, especially as a result of petitions called prayers. I mean, dog's busy, right? Can't expect it to know there's a crisis unless our IF receives enough petitions to be moved to intercede. Having provided my rather lengthy introduction, I will move on to my absolute insistence that if a religious, mystical person has a loving heart and advances equality for all, not just for those of their particular tribe, my statement concerning loving the person while ignoring the mysticism is accurate. My big problem with many people of faith is the hatred and condemnation spewed on other because other does not share the ridiculous nonsense of someone's one true faith. If someone wants to pray, wants to worship, wants to not eat certain foods, to perform certain activities that harm no one, then I say you do you. But far too many who know there is the way, the truth, and the light wish to force everyone to follow their rules is absolutely abhorrent and a slap in the face to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Hey, dog bless us all, and remember to do unto others as you would have done unto you, and not try to force others to do as you see fit because dog told you to.